In the peaceful kingdom of Eldoria, a grand invitation was sent to every home. The king himself had called for a great feast, a celebration like no other. People whispered in excitement. This was their chance to see the king's legendary golden mirror, said to reveal a person's true worth. In a small, quiet village on the edge of the kingdom, a young boy named Elias held the invitation in his trembling hands. Unlike the others, he was not excited. He was worried. Why would the king want someone like me? Elias whispered to his mother. He had always felt insignificant, too short, too plain, too quiet. He wasn't strong like the blacksmith's son or clever like the merchant's daughter. He often felt invisible, but his mother only smiled and pressed the invitation into his hands. The king sees more than you know, my son. Go, and you will understand. Elias sighed. How could a king see anything special in him? Elias set out early in the morning, carrying nothing but the invitation in his pocket and questions in his heart. The road to the palace was long, and as he walked, he met others on the same path. First, there was Matthias, a strong young man carrying a heavy wooden staff. The king surely wants people like me, Matthias said confidently. I am a shepherd. I know how to lead, how to fight off wolves. The king needs strong men in his kingdom. Elias simply nodded, feeling even smaller in comparison. Then came Miriam, a girl dressed in fine clothes. My father is a merchant, she boasted. I know how to speak well, how to handle wealth. The king wants those who are wise with money. Elias looked down at his simple sandals. What did he have to offer? But as they walked, an old man sitting by the roadside called out, Are you all going to see the king? Yes, Matthias replied. We are on our way to the great feast. The old man nodded and smiled. Remember, the king does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. Elias felt something stir inside him. Could that really be true? As Elias continued walking, his mind was filled with questions. Does the king really see something in me? Why would he invite me? The road became steep, and Elias struggled to keep up. Matthias climbed with ease, his strong legs pushing forward. Miriam walked gracefully, barely breaking a sweat. But Elias, he felt tired, weak. Then a boy about his age appeared, struggling even more than Elias. His tunic was torn, his feet dusty. He fell to the ground, exhausted. Miriam sighed. He'll never make it. Matthias shook his head. Only the strong should stand before the king. But Elias hesitated. Something inside him told him to stop. He reached out a hand. Come on, Elias said. I'll help you. The boy looked up, surprised. Why would you help me? Elias smiled. Because the king invited us both. Together, they walked forward. At that moment, Elias felt something stir in his heart again. Maybe strength wasn't just about muscles. Maybe the king saw something different. As Elias and the boy, whose name was Daniel, walked together, they heard voices ahead. A group of travelers had gathered near a small stream, whispering among themselves. Not everyone will be allowed to see the king, a tall man in fine robes announced. Only those who are worthy. Elias felt his heart sink. How do we know if we are worthy? He asked. The man smirked. That depends. What can you offer the king? Strength, wisdom, wealth? Miriam stepped forward. I know about trade and money. Matthias raised his staff. I am strong and fearless. The man nodded approvingly. Then you may have a place at the feast. Daniel lowered his head. I have nothing to give. Elias felt the same way. What did he have that mattered? Then he remembered the old man's words. The king does not look at what people look at. Taking a deep breath, Elias whispered, I may not be the strongest or the smartest, but I know that the king invited me. That must mean I matter to him. The tall man scoffed. "We'll see about that." Elias felt uncertain, but something inside him told him to keep walking. The travelers reached a checkpoint on the road. In front of them stood a large wooden gate, guarded by two stern-looking men. One of them stepped forward and raised his hand. "Only those who prove their worth may pass." Matthias stepped up first. "I am strong," he declared, flexing his arms. "I can fight and protect." The guard nodded. "Strength is valuable. You may pass." Miriam stepped up next. "I understand business and wealth." The guard nodded again. "Wisdom is valuable. You may pass." One by one, others gave their reasons, their skills, their talents, their riches. The guards allowed them through. Then came Daniel's turn. He hesitated. I have nothing to offer," he admitted. The guard frowned. "Then why are you here?" Daniel looked down, defeated. Then Elias stepped forward. His heart pounded, but he spoke firmly. "We were invited by the king. That alone should be enough." The guards exchanged glances. "Enough?" one of them scoffed. "Do you really believe the king invites people with nothing to give?" Elias swallowed hard. He did not feel important. He did not feel special. But deep inside, something told him the invitation was not a mistake. "Yes," he said, "I believe the king knows my worth, even if I don't." For a moment, there was silence. Then, to everyone's surprise, the guards stepped aside. "Then go and see the king." Elias and Daniel walked through, their hearts beating fast. Could it be true? Could the king really see something in them that no one else did? Elias and Daniel walked past the gate, their steps uncertain but determined. The path beyond was quieter now, with fewer travelers ahead. After a while they saw a woman struggling under the weight of a heavy sack. She was older, her back bent from the load. Matthias walked past without stopping. "I can't slow down. The king expects strong men like me." Miriam sighed. "I would help, but this is not my responsibility." Elias hesitated. He didn't feel strong, but something told him that strength wasn't just about muscles. He turned to Daniel. "We should help her." Daniel frowned. "But what if we fall behind?" Elias smiled. "Then we'll trust the king to lead us." Together they lifted the sack and helped the woman carry it. She looked at them with gratitude. "Thank you, my sons. You remind me of the one who said, 'Whatever you do for the least of these, you do for me.'" Elias's heart warmed. Could it be that worth wasn't in power or riches, but in showing love? As they helped the woman to her feet, a gentle breeze blew through the trees, and the path ahead seemed brighter. After helping the woman, Elias and Daniel continued their journey. But doubt still lingered in Elias's heart. As they walked, they overheard a group of travelers ahead. "The king surely favors the strong," one man said, glancing at Matthias. "Or the wise," another added, nodding toward Miriam. Elias lowered his head. He had neither strength nor wisdom. Then a man in fine clothing approached him. "You are small and unremarkable," he said. "What makes you think the king will accept you?" Elias hesitated. Daniel, standing beside him, looked nervous. "Maybe they're right, Elias. Maybe we don't belong here." Elias thought about turning back, but then he remembered the words of Scripture his mother used to say, "I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made." Psalm 139:14. He took a deep breath. "I may not be the strongest or the smartest," he said, "but the king invited me. He knows my worth even when I don't." The man scoffed. "We'll see if the king truly thinks that." But this time, Elias didn't let the words shake him. He pressed forward, determined to see the king. The road soon led Elias and Daniel to a small, still lake. The water shimmered in the afternoon light, reflecting the sky like a mirror. They stopped to rest, kneeling beside the water. Daniel sighed. Elias, what if we're wrong? What if the king only wants people like Matthias and Miriam? Elias looked at his own reflection. He had always felt small, unimportant. But deep inside, he remembered the old man's words. The Lord looks at the heart. Then something strange happened. The surface of the water rippled, and suddenly Elias saw something different. Instead of his own weak, uncertain face, he saw himself standing tall, confident, clothed in royal garments. Daniel gasped, "Elias, look at yourself." Elias' heart pounded. He realized something powerful. The king did not invite him because of what he could do. The king invited him because of who he was. Fearfully and wonderfully made, not because of his strength, not because of his wisdom, simply because he belonged to the king. With renewed confidence, he turned to Daniel. "We don't need to be like them. The king invited us as we are." They stood up, ready to continue the journey. Elias and Daniel continued their journey, feeling encouraged after the lake. But as they climbed a steep hill, dark clouds gathered overhead. The wind picked up. The sky, once golden, turned gray. Suddenly, lightning flashed, followed by a deep rumbling of thunder. The road became slippery with rain, and the once clear path was now hard to see. Matthias and Miriam hurried ahead, disappearing into the mist. Daniel clutched Elias' arm. "What if we're lost? What if we never reach the palace?" Elias felt fear creeping back in. Then a voice echoed in his heart. "Do not be afraid, for I am with you." Isaiah 41:10. Taking a deep breath, Elias looked ahead. "We keep going," he said. "The king called us. He will not abandon us now." Step by step, they moved forward, rain soaking their clothes. It was hard. It was uncertain. But they believed that beyond the storm, the king was waiting for them. The storm finally cleared as Elias and Daniel reached the top of the hill. Before them stood a magnificent palace, its golden gates shining in the sunlight. The road leading to it was paved with smooth stones, and the air was filled with a sense of peace. Other travelers had already arrived, Matthias, Miriam, and many others. Elias took a deep breath. "We made it." As they approached the gates, a royal messenger stepped forward. "The king will now receive his guests." One by one, the travelers entered the palace. Some walked with confidence, others with hesitation. Then it was Elias and Daniel's turn. Elias stepped forward, his heart pounding. Would the king truly accept him? The great doors swung open, revealing a grand hall filled with warm golden light. At the far end of the room stood the king. He was unlike anyone Elias had ever seen. Strong, yet kind, powerful, yet full of love. His eyes seemed to see straight into Elias' heart. The king smiled and spoke with a voice full of warmth. "Welcome, my child. I have been waiting for you." Tears welled in Elias's eyes. "But I have nothing to offer you." The king stepped forward and gently placed a hand on Elias's shoulder. "You were never invited because of what you could do. You were invited because of who you are. You are mine. You are fearfully and wonderfully made." At that moment, all the doubts, all the fears melted away. Elias finally understood. His worth was never in what he could achieve. His worth was in being the king's child, and that was more than enough. The feast was unlike anything Elias had ever seen. There was laughter, music, and joy. No one was greater or lesser. All were welcomed at the king's table. Matthias and Miriam sat beside Elias, no longer concerned with their strength or wisdom, but simply grateful to be in the presence of the king. Daniel turned to Elias with a smile. "We belong here." Elias nodded. "We always did. We just had to believe it." As the feast continued, Elias realized something else. This wasn't the end of his journey. It was only the beginning. The king had called him for a purpose, not just to sit at the table, but to go and tell others the truth. They, too, were fearfully and wonderfully made, And so, as the great doors of the palace stood open, Elias knew that one day he would walk out again, not as the lost boy who doubted his worth, but as a messenger of the king. For the first time in his life, he truly knew who he was, a child of the king. If you enjoyed this story and the reminder that we are all fearfully and wonderfully made, please give this video a thumbs up and share it with your friends and family. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an inspiring story like this one. Remember, you are loved, you are valued, and you are created for a purpose. Keep walking confidently in the truth of who you are.